So we're watching, it really is interesting. We're watching these battle lines being drawn, but they're not the battle lines that people tell us that they are, especially the press, because the press is left wing. So they tell us, oh, this is about, they're being drawn overseas, they're being drawn in Congress, they're being drawn at the Supreme Court. And it's especially true of this kind of amorphous deep state they are being drawn over. The battle lines, they say the battle lines are abortion versus non-abortion. I say it's between whether our laws are made in the Supreme Court and imposed upon us, or whether we obey the Constitution and we each get to vote for laws in our individual states. They say the same thing. It's about gay marriage or something, but it's not about gay marriage. It's like, we on the right can disagree about gay marriage. What we can't disagree about is whether the Constitution includes an enforced right to gay marriage. All the Constitution does is enumerate the powers that the federal government has, and that means that any powers that aren't mentioned in the Constitution aren't there. There were founding fathers who did not want a First Amendment because they said, well, we don't mention the right to regulate speech in the Constitution, so everyone will know that they don't have the right. Fortunately, wiser heads prevailed. So they are, it's so important to the left to gin up hysteria over each new issue every day because they want to keep us away from the real issue, which is the structure of freedom, which is set out by the Constitution. The enumerated powers, the separation of powers, the rule of law, all of these things they want to override because it's always an emergency. Remember, Rahm Emanuel said, don't let an emergency go to waste. That's what he meant. What he meant was never let an emergency go to waste because you can use the hysteria that you gin up to override the Constitution, override the rules to freedom. And, I was talking, I think it was earlier this week, about the fact that socialism, even if it worked, which it never does, it kills innovation, it kills freedom, it kills everything. But even if it worked, it would be slavery because they take away the fruits of your labor. They decide how to spend your money. Why do they own your time? Why does the state own your time, which you use to create property and money? But it also, because it violates freedom, it degrades people and it twists people. There was a piece in the Wall Street Journal this morning. I wish everybody could read this, by Erica Commissar, a psychoanalyst. She's the author of Being There, Why Prioritizing Motherhood in the First 3 Years Matters, which it really does, by the way. I mean, all these women who have babies and then go right back to work, I think they're making a big mistake, both for their own lives and for the life of their children. I think they should be free to make that mistake, but there it is. She points out that Sweden has very high personal income tax rates, and one of the highest personal income tax rates in the world. And the leftist socialists are always pointing to Sweden as a model of socialist society. And she says the money that they get from taxes pays for the kind of support many American women would welcome, but it comes with pressure on women to return to the workforce on the government's schedule, not their own, because once the government is paying the price, they're in charge. They get to say what they do. If a mother decides she wants to stay at home with her child beyond the state-sanctioned maternity leave, she receives no additional allowance, which creates an extreme financial burden on those families, and the pressure is social as well. A 32-year-old friend told me that she was in the park with her 2-year-old son when she was surrounded by a group of women who berated her for not having the boy in daycare. That's socialist life. That is socialist life. They pay for your maternity leave, so therefore they decide when your maternity leave ends. And if you decide, hey, I want to stay and raise my kid, not only the government, but the society itself is opposed to you. There was a letter in the Wall Street Journal just a couple of days ago where a woman said when her husband got promoted, she told her son, I've been promoted too. Now I've been promoted to your full-time mother because we can afford for me to stay at home. So I just want to show you some of the ways in which they distract us from the true fight, which is the fight to stay free. Free with all its inequalities, free with all its problems, free with all its mess. And free with all the fact that we have to solve problems a little more slowly than if it was imposed by the great poobahs up above us. Yesterday, there was this exchange, amazing exchange. It was on MSNBC. Katie Tour is talking to J.D. Vance, who wrote I thought, the very good memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. He is a mild, moderate conservative. And listen to her question. She is talking about the fact that we want to appoint judges. See, I said this yesterday, but just to repeat, they want to appoint judges who will give them what they want, who will say, you have to have abortion, you have to have gay marriage. We don't want to appoint justices who say, you can't have abortion, you can't have gay marriage. We want to appoint justices who say, This is what the Constitution says. This is who decides. Because as Thomas Sowell is fond of saying, it's not what's right or wrong, it's who gets to decide what's right or wrong. That's what keeps you free. All right, so listen to the way Katie Torr asks this question. Then listen to JD's answer, right, which is a very calm, very reasonable, conservative answer, and just the fact that she can't hear a word he's saying.
Based on where Americans stand on the issues, and Americans have really moved in a much more progressive direction over the years, do you think it's appropriate to continue to take such a strict originalist view of the Constitution, given it's 2018 and not 1776?
Well, I don't know that Americans have become more progressive on everything. Certainly times have changed since 1776, but how you interpret the Constitution is ultimately different from what policy preferences you want. And this is a point that conservatives make pretty often about the Supreme Court, that whether you want the laws to move in a progressive or a conservative direction, the Supreme Court is a separate institution with a separate mandate under our constitutional structure. So, for example, if you want abortion to be outlawed or you want abortion to not be outlawed, that is a question, and there's an open debate about whether that question should be decided by the Supreme Court or that question should be decided by voters and by state legislators and by federal legislators. That is a question, to me, that's about constitutional structure, not so much about policy preferences.
Well, the arc of history has shown that opinions have become more progressive.
She can't hear a word he's saying because she doesn't want to know that that's the fight. Because once you put it like that to people, once you say, hey, guess what? We're not arguing about the issue. We're arguing about the framework under which the issue is decided. People get that. People are not stupid. But if you can get them ginned up, if you can get them excited, if you can say your rights are going to be taken away, if you can say, oh, look at the babies being pulled from the mommies at the border, then the rule of law, then the Constitution, then the structure that maintains this freedom that is so precious and so rare, it has sprung up a few times in human history and died very rapidly. We have kept it alive for a very long time, relatively speaking, a couple hundred years, which is a long time for freedom to live. It doesn't just drop out of the sky. It was built by minds and men who died and lived and thought to build this thing, and they want to tear it down. So in order to tear it down, they have to get you excited about each new issue. I'm going to give her a pass on the 1776 Constitution. There was no Constitution in 1776. I'm glad Katie Torr knows that 1776 was a thing. I'm just glad she can make that reference somewhere. Okay, so they gin up hysteria, and they're always hysteria all the time. And they have this thing, I love this thing on the left, where if somebody says something forcefully, no matter how stupid it is, and people applaud, that's supposed to give it legitimacy. So like Joy Behar, who had, I think, won the award for saying the stupidest thing about Brett Kavanaugh, the new Supreme Court pick. Here, listen to the way she talks. She is saying something so stupid, so ungrounded in fact, but the fact she says it forcefully and people applaud is supposed to mean something.
Why would a president who's under investigation by the FBI for obstruction of justice and collusion be allowed to pick a Supreme Court justice who will be there? I'll be dead. There are many people in this room who will still be alive and need abortions and what have you, need health care. How dare he be allowed to do this when he is under investigation?
How dare the president be allowed to fulfill his constitutional right and duty when they are creating a false narrative? I don't even know what she's saying, but how dare he? As long as she says how dare he and they applaud. So then listen to the stuff they're talking about. Some of this stuff is actually kind of scary. And we're going to talk to Matt Walsh about this when he comes on the show later on, about this kind of this division, how powerful the division is between the left and sane people, the division between the left and people who see reality. This is on CNN. An ex-CIA agent is on CNN, and listen to the way she talks. She had put out a tweet saying the republic is burning. And listen to her. This is a former member of the deep state, and this is the way the people in the deep state are thinking.
Now what we're seeing is how weak these institutions are when it comes up against authoritarian measures. So the institutions themselves aren't built for this. And our democracy is fragile enough right now, I think, because of the erosion that's happened, that we're starting to see and not feel quite as impactfully as we should some of the things that authoritarians have typically done throughout the years. So, for instance, we have two branches of power, executive branch and Congress, who we were hoping would not act in their self-interest. that doesn't appear to be the case at this point. So we're still relying upon the Supreme Court to be able to do that. And that, is going to be determined by what happens when Kennedy retires. But for me, it's really just about seeing how D.C. has changed and the evolution of D.C. since I've left the CIA. And what has happened with all of these institutions and how easy it is for Trump to denigrate them just through a tweet and continually attacking these institutions. Yeah. That to me is hugely problematic. And I just feel like we're not seeing the sense of urgency in all of this that we need to at this point.
So her tweet says the Republic is burning. This is not hyperbole. She's talking about tweets. How is it not hyperbole? How is it not hyperbole? What is she talking about? The democratic institutions, she says, are not strong enough to withstand that. And Kirsten Powers, who is a smart woman, she's an intelligent woman, she picks this up. She picks this hysteria up because the issues are more important to them than the structure that preserves the freedom under which we decide these issues. Listen, I'm shocked at Kirsten Powers on this. Listen to her.
This is what happens in every country before the fall, where some people say people are being alarmist, everybody's overreacting. When things are starting to crumble, people literally say our institutions are too strong, they can, stand up against this. And the fact of the matter is the first institution that goes is the media. Mm-hmm. And that's the first institution that Donald Trump is trying to tear apart, and talks about the media being the enemy of the people, which is authoritarian speak, and has Republicans now parroting this, constantly about fake news and how you can't trust anybody in the media. It's literally like out of Vladimir Putin's playbook. I mean, this is, when Scott was saying, well, this isn't, we don't want what Vladimir Putin wants. Well, we who? Donald Trump seems to very much want what Vladimir Putin wants. He acts exactly like Vladimir Putin. The whole government by spectacle, that's something that, that Putin did, where you just create everything as a spectacle to the point that nobody can trust anything anymore. And so they just tune out.
First of all, this is amazing. She feels that being criticized. I mean, what has Trump done? When has he silenced her? How is her? If she were living in a dangerous, she would be in danger. She would be, they would be trying to shut her down. All Trump has done is fought back against the constant bias of stations like CNN, and suddenly that's the hysteria. That's where our government is going to fall. And when there's this thing with Russia is starting to make me a little crazy, because she says he wants exactly what Russia. He's over in Brussels telling Germany to ditch this $11 billion pipeline. Without that pipeline, without his oil, Vladimir Putin is sitting on a corner on 52nd Street with a tin cup. I mean, what are they talking about? Donald Trump is, it's funny. To me, if you want to find a threat against the Republic, how about the fact that Lisa Page, the FBI lawyer, or as Trump called her in a tweet, the layer, he left out the W because she was, I don't know if he did this on purpose, because she was messing around with Peter Strzok. She refused to show up for a subpoena. She just did it before the House. I don't want it. I'm in the deep state, man. I outrank it. I don't have to show up for, Strzok is out on Capitol Hill now testifying, and he was saying, I would never, just because I said we've got to stop Trump, just because I said we had a backup plan, just because I said, don't worry, I'm going to stop this. I won't let this happen. That doesn't, I am trained. I am a trained FBI agent. Trust me. This is the guy, by the way, who also vowed, he's sworn to tell the truth, but he also vowed he would be faithful to his wife. So I don't know why we should trust him at all. If you want to find a threat, I mean, that's the kind of threat that worries me. I don't hear these people naming one thing, not one thing that Trump has done, except tweet. But it's all about this. And this hysteria about Russia. Trump is in Brussels and he makes this speech. He gets up and he talks about whether Putin is his enemy. This is cut number 2.
He's been very nice to me the times I've met him. I've been nice to him. He's a competitor. Somebody was saying, is he an enemy? No, he's not my enemy. Is he a friend? No, I don't know him well enough. But the couple of times that I've gotten to meet him, we got along very well. You saw that. I hope we get along well. I think we get along well. But ultimately, he's a competitor. He's representing Russia. I'm representing the United States. So, in a sense, we're competitors. Not a question of friend or enemy. He's not my enemy. And hopefully someday, maybe he'll be a friend. It could happen. But I just don't know him very well. I've met him a couple of times. And when I did meet him, most of you people were there.
See, Trump's not an ideological guy. I don't necessarily agree with what he says. I think Putin's an enemy. But I get it. This is the way he operates. He operates on a person-to-person basis. Now, listen to the left. Jonathan Chait, I think I talked about this yesterday. I did, about his conspiracy theory. It's on the cover of New York Magazine. They've got a cover where they transpose the letters so Trump's name and Putin's name are kind of blended together. He puts forward this idea, and he himself says it's an extreme possibility. But of course, anybody can say this stuff, right? He's got no proof of it, that Trump went to Russia, and since then he has been a Russian agent trying to destroy us all by selling NATO down the river. Listen to this guy talk for a minute.
Everyone always says, well, this has been Trump's view forever. All this stuff he's saying about the Western allies splitting us apart from the West, and how he's sort of pissing on them all the time and saying, we should let them go their own way. That's just what he's always thought. It's not really what he's always thought. It's what he's thought since 1987. He never thought that before then, or at least he never said it before then. And in 1987 is when he went to Moscow, and he's feted by the Russians and tours Moscow. And then he comes back. Then he starts talking about running for president for the first time. And then he starts talking for the first time about how our allies are a bunch of freeloaders and we should kick them to the curb.
Yeah, and we should say that he is, I just want to be clear here, he is really consistent on that point, right? The idea that this sort of zero-sum view that our allies are free riding and we're paying for it. He takes out full-page ads at $100,000. He sounds identical to how he does now, right? The idea that, like, we're getting abused, we're getting taken for granted, and we're paying for other people's defense.
We're paying for other people's defense who were defending against the Russians.
Right, at that point particularly, yes.
So it really dovetails with Russian foreign policy interests then and now. Now, again, that's probably a coincidence, but it might not be. I think, you have to take seriously the possibility that it's not a coincidence.
It's amazing. That's amazing what he just said. Trump is over there, like I just said, and like he just said that Trump is over there telling them that they shouldn't be buying Russian oil while asking us to defend them against Russia. And he says, well, that's Russian policy. That ain't Russian policy. Russia wants to sell the oil. That's all they've got. That's all they've got is the oil. And so it's one thing for this clown, Jonathan Chait, to make this stuff up, because I love the stuff. I love the stuff. We have no proof, but it could be. It's like, I have no proof the guy is from outer space, but it could be. I have no proof the guy's not a Venusian, but he could be. It could be. I noticed that Venus was in the sky, and then Chait was on TV. Just saying. Insane. But it's one thing for this guy to do it. It's another thing for Adam Schiff, this McCarthyite congressman who has been just, sending innuendo, Russian innuendo after Trump again and again and again. He's on with, what's this guy's name? Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC. And listen to Schiff. He's talking about Trump is going to meet with Putin on the 16th, I believe it is, in Helsinki. But he might meet with him alone, and we can't trust him to do that. Listen to this.
Told there will be a one-on-one meeting where it will simply be Putin, Trump, and the translators. Do you have concerns about that?
I certainly do, and I think there's clearly a reason why the president wants to meet alone with Putin, and that is he wants to be able to leave that meeting and be able to make any claim, no matter how at odds with the facts about what took place, knowing that Putin will not challenge him on it, knowing that he can represent whatever is in his interests. Even though he isn't going to be willing to confront Putin on our elections, he's not going to be willing to confront Putin on Russia's invasion of its neighbor or the support of a war criminal in Syria. But Trump can claim whatever he wants. That is certainly dangerous, I think, to our interests. We don't know what representations he will make to Putin, what understanding they may arrive at that they keep secret. But it is very much in Russia's interest.
Something about that bland little smile on his face, I just find incredibly sinister, that he's sitting there telling us we can't trust the President of the United States to sit down in a room alone with Vladimir Putin because what's he going to, that's where they pass the radioactive secret. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. But this guy's a congressman, and a powerful congressman. It is amazing. It is amazing to me that he is sitting there on television saying this. But this is it. It's silence, shut people up. Emotionalism, conspiracy, panic, anything they can do to distract you from the fact that we're in a battle, we are in a conflict, but the conflict is not what they say it is. It is not between, what the left wants and what the right wants. It's between what the left wants and a system of government that has lasted over 200 years for a change that has kept us free. That's what we're trying to preserve. I'm willing to lose and win under a system of freedom. I'm willing to lose even on issues that I hold incredibly dear, even on issues that are incredibly important to me. I'm willing to lose if I am free to speak, to fight, to vote. When he got 5 guys at the Supreme Court just decreeing that this is how I'm going to live, not so much.